It's almost October. Okay, who am I kidding? We're barely halfway there, but I figured it was time to break down some of the huge games coming out in October, which is stacked. Let's begin. This is my 10th year of doing these. Hope you like them. Subscribe if you want. Also, I'm sure I missed something, so pipe off in the comments. The first 100 people in the comments who comment will have commented in the comments. Let's go. Up first, Until Dawn, October 4th for PC and PS5. Now, first off, Until Dawn from Supermassive, it sort of hit the ground running like most of the loosely termed protagonists that made up the hormone-charged flirt group that decided the best thing to do to honor the death of a prior friend is to revisit the place of the disappearance. Originally a PlayStation 4 game, now finally many years later the PC version is coming out, care of Sony's much more open attitude towards PC ports. Until Dawn puts players in control of 8 young adults trying to survive a terrifying night in a remote mountain lodge. The narrative begins with this tragic prank gone wrong, resulting in the disappearance of 2 twin sisters, and 1 year later their brother Josh invites the group back to the family's mountain lodge, which doesn't sound suspicious, like, at all. This is one of those narrative story-based games, a cinematic title like Quarry or the Dark Anthology games, except this one was good. It's got murder, mayhem, treachery, a mystery played out across the whole damn mountain. It's got Hayden Panettiere, the woman with the extraordinary name. She's in the game. So is Brett Dalton, who was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as well as Rami Malek, star of Mr. Robot, Bohemian Rhapsody, and of course, the super hit classic Battleship. The original game's plot and story, acting, music, and of course, Peter Stormare as a fourth wall-breaking character absolutely made the game something unique. It was fantastic then, and returning now to the PS5 and the PC, I'm stoked to actually replay this. The game's excellent open-ended choice and consequence system was not necessarily one note, as other games that have come before and after it have. It had many decisions coming back a bit later to bite you, both figuratively and literally, in more subtle ways than a lot of other titles, and some not so subtle. The game's core mechanic revolves around the player's choice and consequences as you control each character, and your decisions shape this narrative and determine who lives and who dies. It's sort of a butterfly effect system that they discuss within the game. It creates a highly replayable experience, and there are numerous outcomes throughout the game. Different characters that can die, and different endings. I really enjoyed Until Dawn, though it had a couple technical issues upon launch, and now we're going to be seeing it again on PlayStation 5 and PC. Another game coming to PlayStation 5 and PC, Silent Hill 2 on the 8th of October. And sure, Bloober Team has a success record that's spotty enough they've been relegated to being called Blooper Team, but hear me out here. Silent Hill 2 Remake is diving into just that, the classic horror game, loved by many, regaled as one of the finest horror titles by others, and Bloober Team, their idea is to remake it from the ground up with today's conventions, yesteryear's ideas, and tech that might make it look good enough to come across as something from tomorrow. It's a ground-up reimagining from gameplay to sound, music, voices. Now, Silent Hill 2 follows James Sunderland, a widower drawn back to the mysterious town of Silent Hill, the ever-burning, ever-churning miasma of misery that pretty much has fascinated gamers since its very first appearance. But James, after getting a letter from his deceased wife, decides to go back to the town to investigate. We can ignore the fact that he should call the cops or maybe, check to make sure it wasn't some Chinese hacker scammer trying to talk him out of his Bitcoin, but that's what he does. James is a doer, and he does what doers do. He gets in deep shit. The best part here is it's not just Bloober Team. They got staff from the original game to come back like the original creature designer who made the creatures in the first place and is helping with not only their design, but location design as well as their reworks. But they also got the original composer back to remake and remix the original game's soundtrack, which makes sense as they're making changes to locations I'm going to talk about in a second. And there's some events that are really so integrated with all of the audio, this just really ends up aligning well. Bloober Team's also decided to change the game to an over-shoulder camera perspective, similar to maybe Resident Evil type of remakes. Combat has been overhauled, the enemies reacting more realistically to gunfire, and some new stealth mechanics are implemented, but they also promised that it's not going to be Gears of War, the Village Edition. It's just that they wanted to increase the fidelity and discrete feeling of control that honestly was missing in that game, which was made back when tank controls and clumsy protagonists were used to amp up the tension versus, actually good gameplay ideas. The game's also on Unreal 5. Hue, shader, compilation, stutter, QuickTime, death scene. But seriously, it's going to look great, and while Unreal has its issues, we all know of them, lighting, detail, and future-proofing are not some of them. That's the exciting part to me, is that because in this day and age of remasters and remakes, where sometimes it feels like a ramshackle job, like someone using super glue on Legos because they forgot 3 base pieces and can't figure out why it keeps breaking, Bloober Team is going all out, full out, and to me that speaks volumes for how seriously the developers and the publisher is taking this. But the best part, and the part that has me so interested, is that they're actually working on expanding the environments in some places, letting players dive a little bit deeper into the town and the original spots. They're also altering some of the writing and dialogue with an aim at changing the character development, but we'll see how that works. I can't remember anyone really wanting a bunch of fanfiction on the Silent Hill 2 characters, but who knows? Because expanding the environments to me, making places familiar yet also mysterious again, is a rare damned thing in remakes. I have to admit, that has me actually a bit more stoked for this one than I expected to be. I wasn't a great Silent Hill fan. I've liked some of them and not liked others. Here, listening and reading and watching about it, I actually feel like Bloober Team's history, such as the game with the perfect name, The Medium, which couldn't have explained its mediocrity any better unless it had just been called a game, that history may be all of these combined ideas coming together, their successes and their failures. These are the makers of Layers of Fear and that game. It feels like they're making a lot of the great decisions I'm expecting for remakes, and cross my fingers on this one. The next one I'm crossing my fingers on just because, hey, it'd be nice to have this all continue to roll forward with success is Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred. This is DLC for pretty much everything out on the 8th of October for Diablo. If there's any DLC with a name so aptly describing and succinctly explaining how many fans feel about Diablo 4 on release, it's Vessel of Hatred. That's probably not fair, but we can all agree that the last two have got pretty rough starts. However, Vessel of Hatred is the upcoming expansion for Diablo 4, set to release on October 8th, that seems to add a ton more to the already improving game in its own right. Now, Vessel of Hatred continues the main narrative of Diablo 4, with players embarking on a quest to find Nerel after a sacrifice to trap the primeval. It also has a new PvE activity, new rewards, and of course the age-old new location and class that many expansions for these games have, as well as new mercenaries. Now, the new locations, it is a massive jungle region. Your feverishly clicking game is set to get on in this developer-stated location that is supposed to feel completely different to anything else in the game. Tropical, swampy, lush setting, so that you can fill it with assorted bad guys all trying to kill you at every turn, as well as new towns and villages and otherwise to collect side quests and buy and outfit your various different character death machines. It all seems to me like a really good idea and a unique place. But even more unique might be the Spiritborn class they're adding. Basically, kids who've been tested by the jungle, and those that fail, well, they die. Those that don't can become the new Spiritborn. It's entirely new, and it takes on the aspects and temporary transformative powers of creatures of the jungle, the jaguar, the gorilla, and of course a centipede, because everyone wants to power those 50-footed pincer-biting POSs in their games. They're supposedly masters of hand-to-hand as well as glaive combat. Honestly, once they mentioned centipedes, I pretty much missed the rest, because I cannot wait to jump in with that kind of character. I loved what I saw in the video. This just looks exactly what I want. Some of the base game updates as well are going to include new pets and more skills, cleaner looting, larger Paragon boards, new legendary glyphs, and a whole new dungeon type that Blizzard aims to challenge even the best players with. Diablo 4 may have launched to a fairly rocky start for a lot of people, and they've made some changes that people haven't necessarily loved. But I'm actually looking forward to Vessel of Hatred, even if it's just because they do some of the best cutscenes in the world, and I can always sit back and watch a really cool anime in cutscene form, if the game isn't that good. Like I said, coming out October. Next up, Metaphor, ReFantazio. This is PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X and S on the 11th of October. Now, Metaphor is a new fantasy role-playing game developed by Studio Zero, a division of Atlas known for creating, of course, the Persona games. This is one of those titles that if you see it and you go, dude, that's Persona, or dude, that's Persona's cousin that visits who's super edgy and always has one headphone in during dinner. You wouldn't be blamed for that if you did. In fact, it's got some wild-ass, weird world building. You're in a location called the United Kingdom of, I don't know, Uchronia, which is a world where ours is fantasy, sort of like Xanth and Mundanes in the Piers Anthony books. The kingdom's in anarchy after their king is assassinated, and for some reason that ends up triggering a magical election where anyone, no matter who or what they are, can become king if they gain enough support. Sort of like, you know, someone who did TV shows or maybe YouTube or maybe lots of social media and then ran for leadership of an entire nation. Players take on the role of a nameless protagonist who, alongside their different companions, becomes embroiled in this larger political struggle. They have to lift the curse of a long-dead prince while competing in this royal tournament to gain the trust of the populace over a 6-month deadline. If it feels like 2 or 3 storylines running over the top of one another, it is, and I sort of dig that. Instead of just being dry, it mixes that dry feeling of running mates in a fantasy world and takes it and smashes it into lots of fighting and magic. The game also has a new hybrid battle mechanic that allows players to switch between real-time action, fast, and turn-based action. This flexibility enables some efficient handling of the lower-level enemies while also letting you jump into more strategic depth for more challenging encounters, so you can speed it through mobs and take the easy guys out and then go slow and turn-based and rethink and think and rethink again every item and attack usage against higher-level enemies. Something that developers have said is needed because they've actually tuned this game to be a bit more difficult than you might expect. The game's also got a job system called archetypes here, and you unlock more by becoming friends and leaders and companions with other characters in the game world that you meet who unlock those, something we've seen in a lot of other games. One place where Metaphor seems to be going is the deeper water in the job system with unique characters like Soul Hacker as a class or an archetype to offset the more expected ones like Tank and Healer. We'll just have to see how that plays out. We have a lot of games that offer that, and you notice it doesn't really change much, but I think this one, from what I've seen, looks like it will. It also is going to have a ton of exploration, which is a key component for Metaphor, and for me, one of the best parts, because the Persona games have always been locked into schools and dungeons and silhouetted heavy streets of urban environments. Metaphor has you exploring the entire kingdom. You got massive cities, towns, giant ancient ruins, all the while doing the very typical RPG stable of taking care of everyone for everything else in the game, because apparently in RPG games, the other people can't make a cup of hot chocolate without losing the fucking mug in a ravine filled with demons. But all of it helps you with the social dynamic that's so important here and makes you become the most popular dude in the land. Darker, fantasy-like, grimdark even, but with a slant at times that reminds you of the Persona games and then just something else. The composer for Persona returns here as well, dutifully so, because for the most part, that dude's final form is just going to be a platinum trophy in the shape of a musical note that defeats enemies by just saying who he is and they're going to quit. His ability to deliver amazing soundtracks is right up there. So if you're into this kind of thing, this might be for you, but I do mention that for a reason. Despite its changes, and they're going to be deep and ranging, the game isn't going out to be anti-Persona. It's not running from the prior elements in a bid to change up everything. It's a game solidly made by some of those devs with an idea towards branching out, not tearing up the tree and replanting another one. It's a highly stylized mix, and some of the changes speak to me as a person who honestly got tired of retreading the same high school grounds, like a star football player who kept returning to graduation in a Letterman jacket. At a point, you just get a little bit tired of returning. But instead of just slightly adjusting one thing, it looks like they came up with a bunch of ideas, some probably percolating for years, and are putting it into a particular game. That, to me, is exciting. Can't wait to play that. Next up, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 for PC, PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S. This is coming out October 25th. Another year, another Call of Duty is what we basically get. It's been a long time coming, especially because of the issues with Microsoft buying Activision and how this is all going to be packaged for people. But this one's been packaged up by Treyarch in collaboration with Raven, and it promises to bring a lot of changes, some we've seen in the demo. Now first, when it comes to the setting and the overall feel, Black Ops 6 is set during the Gulf War, 1991, with parts of the campaign also apparently taking place after 9/11 in 2001. The game's narrative moves between those 2 points and time periods. Unlike previous titles, Black Ops 6 does feature some elements of open world mixed with more linear missions that we've seen from previous games. I say unlike some, there has been that a little bit though. When it comes to the big changes, one of them is the Omni movement system, and it's exciting. If you jumped into the beta, I'd like to hear what you think of this. Omni movement lets players slide and dive and move and sprint in any direction at any one time, which feels like a stark contrast to the way the original Call of Duty games play and feel. And even in my short time with the beta, I got to say I actually enjoyed it, though there were a couple issues. You can go prone, twist around, shoot in any direction. It just feels good, has a fluidity to it that the games prior just didn't have. I can't wait to see how it works in single player, or if it's there, both for us, but also if you get to see some AI doing it. You can also turn off and on those movement assists for crouching and mantling and so forth to make it feel a little bit more older school. Listen, I don't know about you, but I think Call of Duty's always been a quick twitch gameplay where matches felt like you leapt into a game with a bunch of AI trained on a subreddit dedicated to one-liners Shane Gillis probably thinks are funny. The combat always felt finicky to me. Not bad, but just very Call of Duty-y. It's always felt like a slow cousin at a family reunion Pictionary game where they yell out, "It's a goat," 3 games after you drew it. Whether you're going to like it or not, I don't know. Also, of course, what would it be if it wasn't a Call of Duty where you can get your prepper on? It's got 50 plus weapons, including some fan favorites. They've also said there's some new additions, and it also features, of course, the ability to decorate the weapons and do all kinds of that. It's also got new perks and equipment. And who knows, if the game's single-player campaign is longer than the shortest Lord of the Rings movie, it's still going to be longer than Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3's campaign. It just feels like they have a more discrete idea and a focus on what they want to deliver with the single player. The devs have made a ton of changes, which we've seen some of them, and we'll see more. Where will they land? I don't know, but I do hope they do land it well, because we also have zombies. Zombies is almost as contentious as the single-player and multiplayer versions of this game, with each version coming out vacillating between this is the best zombies version ever to oh my god, this is terrible. What we do know about this one is it's round-based, it's 4 players, it's waves, it's zombies looking to chew on you as you can put down traps and setups that you buy between rounds to stop that chewing. The system of back and forth and that risk and reward, purchasing that one trap and hoping it's in the right place is awesome. I've always loved that about zombies, and it looks like they've got that dark, odd, whimsical style of humor that's always smack dab in the trailers, and they show that. I cannot wait to jump into all those modes and just see how it comes together. But we're not even close to done. Next up is Life is Strange Double Exposure. This is PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S as well, and it's on the 29th of October. So Life is Strange Double Exposure is the new entry in Life is Strange as a series. It is developed by Deck 9 Games and not by Don't Nod. But that doesn't mean they haven't brought back the characters just because it's a different developer. This is the return of Max Caulfield, who now works as a photographer at a university. Max was in some of the prior games, a young girl at the time, given the ability to adjust time and affect choices if you've never played these, but now set in Vermont at a college where Max works and refuses to use her powers like a damned idiot. Her best friend, Safi, is found dead in the snow on campus, and in a desperate attempt to save her, of course, Max tries to use her time rewinding power, which she hasn't used in a long time. However, instead of rewinding time, she inadvertently opens a gateway to a parallel universe where Safi is still alive but remains in danger. That's right, 2 timelines, because one universe with time-traveling characters trying to trip us up in death isn't confusing enough. This unique premise introduces the game's core mechanic now, which is the ability to shift between both timelines. Players have to navigate both realities, uncover clues, make choices that will affect both versions of events. And if it's anything like the prior titles, consistently managing an ever-growing level of bad choices to stop it from full-on flipping over and spilling everyone out into an even worse situation than the one Max powdered her way into while listening to Avenged Sevenfold. The amazing thing here, though, is because there are 2 timelines and 2 worlds, that also means, 2 killers, and you have to figure out how to stop them both. The campus that we know so far is fully explorable, from converted churches to popular student hangouts, including a bar. Each location is supposedly crafted to have players able to go around, find secrets, and also solve this ever-growing mystery across both timelines. Also, it's been a while, and I will say that this has taken a pretty good graphical step up, even if the character's art style is still going to be present in that sort of characterization that we've expected and seen in the prior titles. Not necessarily super realistic, but going between almost a hyper-realistic Sims 4 and the original games. It's also got a complete soundtrack with licensed music. The only issue here I have is a big one, and that's that Square's doing the whole early access thing, with 2 weeks early access to 2 chapters if you get the Ultimate Edition of the game, which makes about as much sense as tearing off a steak and eating some of it before it's even close to being done, and then being mad that the rest of it isn't completely cooked. The idea of waiting for 2 weeks just makes no sense. It should be called like early half access or half-assed access or just half-assed. But whatever, I still want to play it. I love the universe, I dig the choices, and I'll take a weirdly refreshing, delightful tour down bad ideas and even worse character choices any day, especially if it means jumping between universes. Can Deck 9 nail it, as many think they did with True Colors, or carry on where Don't Nod have passed the ball? Who knows? I'm excited to check it out. Next up, Dragon Age Veilguard. This is PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and this is on October 31st. So Dragon Age Veilguard, this is going to be the 4th mainline installment to the game. If there's a series of games with more ups and downs than Dragon Age, I can only assume it's an adult-only dating simulator on Steam. From Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and what the Hellening of Dragon Age Inquisition, the story of how the hinterlands broke the backs of entire legions of gamers, these titles have been all over the place. They've been just hit and miss, because each one of them usually has at least one thing great, or some things great, like Dragon Age Origins, but the others are just everywhere, which seems to be the response for Dragon Age Veilguard and its announcement. Now, Veilguard is set 10 years after the events of the original Dragon Age Inquisition, in a world still grappling with the aftermath of the Inquisition's collapse and Solas's betrayal, which was about as surprising as realizing the day you were born was the first day someone ever took attendance in your life. But here we are, the Dreadwolf and the player, taken on the new role of Rook, a new protagonist who leads a group called the Veilguard, tasked with stopping Solus from tearing down the veil and potentially destroying the world. If anyone thinks the name of the main character doesn't have a major double meaning involving chess and maybe a newbie, then you haven't played a Dragon Age game, and they're very straightforward writing. One of the most significant changes in Veilguard is the combat system. Veilguard leans straight into action-based gameplay with a system you can pause, though, to pick new moves from, but also lets you just bash it out with the abilities and skills you have hot-fitted into your loadout, pausing to pick particular skills or new sets. So it feels fast-paced at first, but sometimes there are other moments where it can look a bit herky-jerky, but we'll just have to see how this ultimately plays out when we all jump into the game. The demos have been a little bit all over the place. The game's gone away from the older style upgrade and leveling systems to something that would look closer to a JRPG with grids of abilities and specializations and systems that are attached to core disciplines. Now, while you play as Rook, you're going to be utilizing others as companions who have their own trees and skills, but they're more of a subset of the main character, with less options to keep them firmly into the upgradable but not upsettingly complex for no reason variant of companion. Each companion also has 5 core abilities that can be enhanced and modified through individual progressions. Taking those companions across the land is going to be one of the major story elements, and players who do travel in this will realize right away that there's a big change here. Thankfully, the developers have gone away from that oftentimes questionable idea of the open world that was in Inquisition, which almost felt like an MMO in some locations, and instead have chosen to go with a larger open hub-styled location, where you can still explore and find secrets, but they aren't so directionless as perhaps the Hinterlands was. However, it's not BioWare if they don't try to replicate the excellent Mass Effect Paragon Renegade system for discussion by making something really close to it that never feels quite as good. It's a mixture of an almost Telltale-like system with that dialogue tree, as well as the game informing you at some decision point, and hey, this will have consequences later, which is like telling you that eating off the floor of a Calcutta restroom might make you sick. Pretty much by just looking at what you're going to say, you're going to notice that. However, Veilguard does seem to be doing something that is a bit unusual and long wanted from me. Effects that you make, changes that you do, and character interactions you have seem to have a longer or resonate longer kind of time period to them, with less of the, oh man, you made me mad, but now it's fine kind of situation, and something that tracks a little longer. Who knows? I'm excited to finally get my hands on this. All the Dragon Age games have vastly changed their feel between titles and looks, and Veilguard is no different. Whether that's also reflecting a change to the core gameplay, being better than Inquisition, I don't know. I'm sure some of you guys really love that. If you did, pipe off in the comments. I would like to know why you liked any of the Dragon Age games. What was the one you enjoyed? I sure as hell hope it has, though. Also, it'd be great as an inside joke if the game had a quest that had you go to the Hinterlands, and then when you try to complete it, it just says you wake up from a terrible nightmare and you move on. Speaking of terrible nightmares, this next game is probably a nightmare for some fans of a particular series, which is Batman. And that is, of course, Batman Arkham Shadow on the MetaQuest 3 in October. Now, at some point, this whole, we know you want a game, but we're not going to give it to you, we're going to give you something somewhat like it kind of oddity that we have with developers is going to come back to bite these people. While everyone clamors for a new Batman game, we get Gotham Knights or Suicided Itself Squad. Here we are getting Batman, but in VR. It's just like having a delicious meal inside of a restaurant in a prison that you also have to pay to get into. Batman Arkham Shadow is going to, or at least they say, allow you to re-enter the immersive dimension of Batman in the original games. And that sort of makes me excited. I love the original Batman experience, and Camouflage Studios, known for their work on Iron Man VR, have stated that this is not an experience game, but a full game of Batman-like experiences. It takes place right after Origins and prior to Asylum storylines, and tells a story of a new Batman villain, the Rat King, and his cult, bringing on the Day of Wrath. The story promises to, they say, deliver a darker element of Gotham, with players encountering a lot of the characters from the story, good guys and bad guys. Gameplay in Arkham Shadow aims to translate a lot of the core mechanics of the Arkham series into Batman, more so than the original experience did, which does mean bat fighting. They say there's going to be bat punching, bataranging, and hopefully some bat back breaking. I also wish there were stealth takedowns that let you whisper, "Swear to me." I would pay real money for the devs to let us use a distance context-sensitive system for voice feedback where you could whisper at enemies from the shadows to scare them. Maybe next time. Here you go. You have the bat hook, the rangs, the smoke bombs, and more. You're doing puzzles, investigating a dark and mysterious place here or there as you bounce around the game world. and always flatly just doing Batman things. Presentation-wise, so far the game doesn't look half bad for a VR game. On locked-in hardware, its meta prison-like system of delivery was a little questionable to me, but the trailers I've seen don't look so bad. The developers have also stated that Arkham Shadow is inspired by the structure of Batman Arkham Asylum, focusing on a series of interconnected, detailed locations rather than, as I said, that fully open world. I'm all for that. If they can nail the puzzles, a bit of investigation, and some combat without making players sick as a dog and still look pretty good, honestly, this one could end up being highly successful. Or at least as successful as a game on the meta can be. Next up, MechWarrior 5 Clans, October 17th. So MechWarrior 5 Clans is an upcoming standalone expansion to MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. It's developed by Piranha Games, and it marks a pretty significant departure from that older game, focusing on a narrative-driven campaign rather than what we saw in the original, which was procedurally generated content. You dive into the skin-tight clan mech suit of a new Jaguar pilot, and during a clan invasion of the Inner Sphere. You leap into your unit with 5 total mechs that you can leap into at any time that are on your team, or control via real-time, as well as a battlefield map. I like the idea of this, and jumping in and out, we'll just have to see how fast that switching is, but MechWarrior 5 Clans showcases a lot of different technology for the different mechs, and that's why the idea of jumping into them is exciting for me. You're going to be able to customize the mechs with different weapons from that clan. A key feature of the game is to support up to 5-player co-op as well, allowing friends to jump into those mechs if you're not playing them. While the game maintains the series' focus on a lot of that customization and combat, it also introduces some new elements, and we'll just have to see how it all comes together. Overall, MechWarrior 5 Clans represents a pretty ambitious change to the MechWarrior series, at least for how they're handling these expansions and how they're moving this forward. They probably just decided they didn't want to do a full, complete additional game, so let's just call it MechWarrior 5 Clans. But what I've seen looks very cool, and the idea of a complete story like that is also exciting. Its focus on the clan perspective and a tighter narrative seems, to me at least, to be an excellent idea, and merging those two, or just a person wanting to jump into this standalone, seems like a very valid bet. I had a lot of love for MechWarrior 5, but diving into the fully drawn-out story with that political intrigue and backstabbing and front-stabbing and just stabby-stabbing of MechWarrior is exciting to me, so I can't wait to check this one out. Next up, Redacted, 31st of October for the Xbox Series X and S, PC, and PlayStation. I wanted to mention this one because it's made by the Callisto Protocol devs, but it's a complete departure. The core's game is really revolving around repeated attempts to reach the last escape pod on a prison. It's Black Iron, the same prison that we saw in the other game, a state-of-the-art penitentiary. It's located on Jupiter's icy moon Callisto. This should all sound pretty familiar. It's overrun with hordes of infected inmates, and of course, as the prison guard, it's your first job, which is to just leave them and try to escape. Now, one of the major intriguing parts here is not only is it roguelike, it's got a system in it called Rivals. Players aren't the only ones trying to escape. Other survivors are, including deranged characters and all kinds of very dangerous ones. They can actually change the world around you, making some locations harder and even diving in on you and having you have to fight them in a one-on-one battle. But because it is roguelike, it's tons of equipment and upgrades, many of them connected to how you performed in prior locations and what you did or how you killed somebody. You have 5 or 6 close-ranged weapons, and you have 8 long-range weapons. They can be mixed and matched and upgraded. Once you get out the first time, you also are able to build and upgrade the character and the equipment and take those continually forward. So each time you make it full through the story and come back again, the weapons are upgraded. A little tiny mini N+ game, I guess. And while initially it looks like an isometric twin-stick shooter, which is pretty much what it is, it also has some other elements I really liked. For example, particular attacks have specific codes needing to be entered, very much like Helldivers 2 when calling in stratagems. But something else I love in this, the game introduces a fight your last corpse mechanic. Now, this is when players die. They leave behind more than just their body, they leave behind all of their stuff and their skills. In subsequent runs, you can face off against a reanimated version of your previous character, complete with the loadout that they had died with. And if you defeat them, you get back one of those skills as an upgrade. Visually, Redacted marks a pretty significant change from Callisto Protocol and that hyper-realistic look. Instead, this has a very graphic novel style with an arcade punk kind of look, and at times it looks like Borderlands or even Void Bastards. As you guys know, I like a lot of these games, whether it be Ascent or just any of these titles where you can jump in. Roguelike's not always my thing, but the ideas they have here seem fairly deep. It aims to blend some pretty intense combat. It's got strategic stuff that you're going to be doing, as well as what appears to be a lot of dark humor. Roguelikes like this have a tendency, especially if that loop is well done, to be very addicting. And what I've seen of this looks like the combat's pretty slick. The graphics, they represent exactly what's going on. I'm not 100% sure I absolutely love it, but it's ended up catching me by surprise and caught me enough that I wanted to put it on this list. Speaking of putting things on this list, what games do you think I missed? Because I am sure there are some. If you guys want to check out the Patreon, it's a huge help. Listen, it's been 10 years. We do not do sponsors. Where everybody else is going on trips to Disneyland and all that stuff, do you know what we do? Nothing. We just buy the games and review them. And I say we because I actually mean you and me. I mean the patrons who've been there for 7-8 years. It's a huge help to the channel, but also subscribing, posting these when you see them, sharing them. Those things help immensely. What also helps is just a thumbs up or a comment. But regardless of all that, peace out and enjoy the rest of your week. Oh, and by the way, you're going to see a ton of content in the coming week from me. A bunch of reviews, as well as, hopefully, 1 or 2 interviews with some composers. Peace out.